disassemble the trigger group. So we're going to remove that retainer pin and push out the carrier pin. Once that's removed, the carrier assembly will be removed, along with the carrier dog guide and spring. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to release the hammer. And we're going to remove the trigger guard bushing in the front that holds the hammer on. Now we're removing the disconnector trigger spring. There it goes. What we're going to do is we are going to remove the rear trigger bushing pin, which will allow us to raise the arm of the trigger up, just like so, and the hammer will be removed. Now we're going to take and remove the trigger. Simply drive the pin out, and the trigger is removed. So here we're removing the sear and the sear spring. And with some coercing, the sear will come out. Now let's remove the plunger spring for the safety. I use needle nose. It seemed to work pretty well. It's just getting a hold of them that's the difficult part. But as you can see, it comes out. And you're going to want to make sure you know which side that was on, because this is a trigger group where you can switch between left and right for the safety. And this one's set up for a right-handed shooter. As you can see, is a close-up of the safety down in the corner. And so what we're going to do first is we're going to put the safety plunger in, and then the safety. And now we're going to put the safety spring back in. And once again, I use needle nose for this. It just seemed to work a whole lot easier doing that. The biggest thing is getting that plunger to fall into its track on the safety. If you don't, it keeps popping up like that and making it difficult for you to put that spring in place. Once it's in the slot, you want to make sure that it's all the way to the bottom. That way it won't walk out or cause any interference when you put the trigger group back in the receiver. So next what we're going to do is we're going to install the sear and sear spring. Pay close attention to how that spring loops through the forward hole on the sear, and then the rear hole, the one that's facing towards the buttstock, is going to be the hole that you're going to slide the pin through. And you want to make sure you use the right pin. The trigger pin is a slightly smaller diameter than the sear pin. Now what we're going to do is we are going to install the trigger assembly and the hammer assembly. So first I put the trigger in there, and then I put the hammer in. I used the trigger guard bushing to hold the hammer in place, and now I'm trying to get the trigger lined up with the hole so I can insert the pin to retain that. So now I'm going to insert the rear trigger guard bushing and then the trigger spring and disconnect spring. This spring's a little more difficult. I would recommend inserting the rear portion of the spring, which is the longer end, and trying to get that seated before pulling it to the forward arm where it's going to be holding onto. And we're just doing a systems check, make sure that everything's working properly before we continue with the rest of the reassembly. Next, we're going to be working with the cartridge carrier. So what we're installing here is the cartridge dog, or the carrier dog and guide. And so you want to put the round end towards the rear of the trigger guard with the arch, with it arching upwards, as you can see. And then it's just kind of messing with it until it gets into place. Pin that is attached to there, to the carrier dog, the pin that's going to go through, does have a half moon, so it's only going to be able to orient one way. And just keep that in mind. And finally, with the trigger group, we're just going to reattach we're going to put in the retaining pin for the carrier pin. This is the Winchester SX3 Disassembly Reassembly. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you could, subscribe to our channel and help support us here on YouTube. I hope to see you next time here at Schmidt's Custom Arms.